Hey, so in today's podcast, we're going to discuss simple food swaps to support kids to eat healthier. Sometimes it's the simple things, isn't it, that make the biggest difference?
Absolutely, definitely. Over the years, I've consulted with parents of kids who have health concerns, and the parents have perhaps decided that their kids, need to make improvements in their kids' diets, and often when parents are at their wits' end and completely desperate to try anything, they often are quite tempted to completely overhaul their family's diet and eliminate perhaps entire food groups, which they then go on to struggle to sustain.
Yeah,
And
can
this,
relate.
yeah, it can absolutely, even for myself, and it creates a whole heap of stress, which I feel like you're just kind of spinning in circles if you're causing stress in your family. So if you're, the first thing I'd just say is if you're seriously concerned about your kids' health, or you suspect they've got a food intolerance, or that there's something going on, it's a really good idea to avoid Dr. Google and work with a practitioner to determine the root cause of the issue and correct it, rather than just having a shot in the dark and, potentially building animosity with your kids as well. That can happen when you just pull the rug out from underneath them and make sweeping changes which they're just not on board with.
Totally. This kind of happened to me when, like I've mentioned before, Evie got unwell.
Yeah.
Just limited what she would eat, and went to a naturopath, found she was zinc deficient, and that impacted
Just
her
fix everything.
appetite. Started supplementing with zinc, and if I hadn't done that, it would have been just
Look, even for me, I'm a naturopath, and there have been times where it's been difficult for me to be objective about the health of family members. So I don't hesitate in seeking the help of a practitioner who can just take that step back and actually independently assess what's going on. And, look, I also think that kids or, family members will take advice of a third party much more regularly, rather than mum saying, eat this because it's going to help you. A third party telling that child. And I know when I was in clinical practice, I had so many parents of teens particularly bring their kids to me and say, look, this is what I think they need to be doing, but if you agree, can you tell them?
Yes.
And, I was that person that they listened to ultimately when their parents had been trying for a long time to make changes. But, today I really just wanted to talk about some really basic changes that will probably go barely unnoticed, to be honest, with your kids, but can undoubtedly improve their health and your own health as well. So I suppose this podcast is just a bit of a back to basics guide, where I just want to share some simple swaps that will just, as I said, positively impact your whole family's health without any stress of being on a diet or making any really big sweeping changes. Anyone can make these simple swaps, I believe. It's often these really micro changes, in my experience, that can often have a really huge impact on long-term health.
Which is so nice to know, like
absolutely.
A tiny tweak.
Absolutely. It can make such a big difference. And none of these things you're going to automatically notice, that straight away that health's improving. But you've got to know that over the long haul, these are all very, very positive changes that you can make to your health and to your kids' health. So the first one for me is an absolute no-brainer, and that's swapping margarine or even spreadable butter for just plain old butter. So I personally pop butter in a dish, like in a Butterbell dish, and I leave it out of the fridge, which makes it completely spreadable. In our hottest of hottest months here in Queensland, I sometimes have to put it back in the fridge and then just make do, basically, with it being a bit harder to spread, and just it doesn't take long though on our hot days for it to get soft enough to spread. You can also blend butter with extra virgin olive oil to create a spreadable butter, so you can do that just in a food processor.
I didn't know that.
Just be careful of the spreadable butters that are on the market. I've only actually ever found one that wasn't blended with vegetable oils. So vegetable oils are the ingredient that I'm trying to avoid here. Margarine, these vegan spreads particularly contain really damaging, highly industrialized and processed vegetable oils, and also artificial trans fats, which are just not healthy choices. They are all products of industry, not of nature. And this simple swap is profoundly beneficial, in my opinion.
Yeah. And is that just for your heart or for...
No, not at all. Not for your heart at all. Just generally,
everything?
every single cell of your body is bogged
wow.
down by trans fats and vegetable oils.
Okay, wow.
Your cells are made of fats.
Yeah.
So the fats we eat and the fats that we're designed to eat as human beings are not fats that we're just happen to be making in big factories at the moment. I always think of really simple analogy. I know that if you, I've never actually done this, but I've seen people do it online.
Yeah.
If you put butter and margarine on a plate or on just on the floor outside, ants will not go near the margarine. They'll invade the butter, but they will not go near the margarine. So I feel like their innate wisdom is probably a whole lot better than ours.
Yeah.
The next thing is just swapping, perhaps white rice for brown rice. You're going to get more nourishment from there. I still eat white rice. I'm not saying I never eat white rice, but we do mix it up between white and brown. If it is a bit of a deal breaker and your kids just aren't keen on brown rice, you can start by mixing the two. Like you could mix the white and the brown. Quinoa is another grain that is so protein rich and so nutrient dense. It has quite an astounding nutrient profile. So my tip with quinoa, though, a lot of people say, oh no, we hate quinoa, it's horrible, it's bitter. It should not be the least bit bitter. It does have a coating on it that are called saponins, which are very bitter, but you can rinse those off. It does take like a good soak or a good rinse in like a fine sieve, put your quinoa in it, pop it under water, running water, and just agitate it before you cook it. If you can soak it, even better still.
Yeah.
Swapping white flour, that highly processed bleached white flour for stone milled flour, for wholemeal spelt perhaps, or even if you're gluten-free, then obviously you're not going to be having flour, you're going to be having a gluten-free flour. But even with gluten-free flours, look for the more whole-based gluten-free flours as opposed to the ones that are just full of, refined potato starches and things like that. Bread, sandwich bread. So, your commercial sandwich bread can have up to 20 different ingredients and include vegetable oil very commonly. I try and buy like an artisan sourdough or a bread where the only ingredients in bread need to be flour, preferably, again, a whole wheat flour or a whole grain flour of sorts, but salt, water, and some kind of rising agent. So it's usually either yeast or sourdough. That's all bread needs to be. And that's the bread that we should be eating. So definitely seeking out bread. If it's something you eat a lot of, seek out a bread with the least amount of ingredients. And that's what I say to people as well, is really focus on the things that feature heavily in your diet. They're the things you need to buy the best possible quality available to you.
So true. Yep.
Rather than just, buying the odd organic potato. Like if, you're eating bread or your kids are eating bread every day, find bread that that is good quality. Pasta or wheat pasta. Look, this is one thing that I'm pretty anal about buying organic. Wheat is genetically modified and routinely sprayed with glyphosates, which are a disaster for your digestive system. And definitely best avoided if you can possibly, like when you're shopping for your own wheat-based products, if you can source an organic wheat product, it's always going to be better than regular. I personally love eating, like I buy a rice quinoa spaghetti made by Ceres. It's pretty widely available and you definitely wouldn't know the difference. If you want to go a step further, zoodles, but that's not really a like for like swap in my mind. Most kids wouldn't recognise the difference between the rice quinoa pasta, for example, or an organic pasta, whereas they probably would detect zoodles.
What's zoodles?
Zoodles, sorry, spiralised zucchini noodles. Yeah.
No.
The next thing is swapping out vegetable oil. So if you're cooking in rice bran oil or canola oil or sunflower or safflower oil or any kind of seed oil, I'd really encourage you to find a different oil to cook in. Extra virgin olive oil, I think, is the best possible option. Other options are things like macadamia nut oil, avocado, butter, ghee, coconut oil. I do have an article on the website about vegetable oils and about better choices. So I'm not going to go into detail because it's not the purpose of this podcast, but you can definitely find more information on the Well Nourished website.
Yeah.
Also swapping out breakfast cereals and brekkie drinks particularly, I feel are just such a disaster nutritionally.
Yeah.
Brekkie cereals are nutritionally void. There's just none. I wish I could say to you there is this particular breakfast cereal that I'm really happy with, but that's just not the case, and I wouldn't be being true to myself. Things like plain oatmeal is fine. Making up your own batches of muesli is so simple,
and delicious.
and delicious as well. Yep, there are lots of recipes on the Well Nourished website again. Chia puddings, soaked oats like Bircher muesli and overnight oats are great options. Homemade smoothies, cooked breakfasts are obviously nutritionally probably the bomb, the most protein dense and the most sustaining for breakfast.
Like eggs.
Eggs, exactly. Yep, omelettes, scrambled, boiled, that kind of thing. Yeah. I'm also a firm advocate for drinking full-fat dairy. Low-fat cow's milks are processed significantly. So shopping for a milk with the least amount of processing. You can get, in most supermarkets, you can actually get pasteurised but unhomogenised cow's milk, and this would be the best choice in my mind. If you're consuming nut milks or plant milks, just look at the ingredients and just make sure there's no vegetable oils and no sugar added. Most of them do have vegetable oils and sugar. So for me, I would choose regular dairy.
Doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. And that's why if these little everyday things cannot contain these highly processed ingredients, then your streets ahead. You really are. Swapping out flavoured yogurts, which are notoriously quite high in sugar, for like fruit yogurts and even some vanilla yogurts, and light yogurts have loads of sugar in them. I buy plain full-fat natural yogurt or coconut yogurt if you're dairy-free, and then I'll add in my own flavouring. So I'll add in vanilla if I want a vanilla-flavoured yogurt, or we'll add in fresh fruit, or my kids love just frozen berries mixed through yogurt is one of their favourite things.
Cinnamon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So, so that would be definitely my recommendation. And salad dressings are another area where sugar and vegetable oils tend to hide. You can really make simply prepared, super nourishing salad dressings that actually support your body to absorb. Like if you put a really well-made, salad dressing that's just made from, say, olive oil and either lemon juice or vinegar and maybe a bit of mustard or honey over your salad or your vegetables, it actually helps the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. So it's a really healthy addition, and store-bought salad dressings, unfortunately, generally, as I said, do contain a lot of, or they're usually vegetable oil based. There are a few that have olive oil bases, but
and so much more cost-effective making your own.
So much more. I'll make up a jar, and it will last us a week. We throw it into the fridge, and it's just like a little routine. It takes no more than 5 minutes for me to make it, and it costs me. It saves a lot of money, and also costs and it also lasts a good week and supports our health. Just thinking about having a bit of variety. I'm not going to say swapping out meats. I'm definitely an omnivore and a fan of including good quality sources of protein in the diet, but instead of just having the same sources of protein, just consider switching things around, adding in a fish meal, perhaps adding in the occasional vegetarian meal, or bulking out meat meals by adding in legumes is really budget friendly and pulses, or adding in more vegetables. And, instead of having the same cuts on rotation, try for more variety. I know I've spoken about, spaghetti bolognese is a favourite in your household, but you always make it with beef mince. I don't know if you've ever tried chicken mince. It's delicious. It's delicious with pork mince as well. So having that variety and trying different cuts.
Does that.
Yeah.
Switches things up.
And just trying different cuts of meat, because different meats have different amino acid profiles, and that variety just really extends the amount of nourishment that you're going to get from your diet across a week. a little one here, and a lot of you might just go, forget it, I'm not doing this. But I'm definitely a fan of dark chocolate. It's going to be less sugar and more nourishing than a dairy milk chocolate.
Yeah.
Or you could go the next step and make something chocolatey that's also homemade, like my raw Snickers bars, super easy to make. And that recipe is on the website. This one's a pretty obvious one, I think, but swapping soft drink for water primarily, but also juices. You'd be surprised how much sugar is in a juice, and, low sugar drinks or like sugar-free drinks I'm just not a fan of, or energy drinks.
Those blue energy drinks.
Really. I mean, look, you don't need a nutrition degree to know that they're not going to, then there's nothing natural about those.
But even what a juice will do to a kid's blood sugar
Totally,
levels, hey?
absolutely.
And their moods, them up and then down.
Yeah, and fills them up with a lot of empty, unnecessary calories.
So they're less likely to eat a decent meal.
Yeah, absolutely. And my daughter's just realised it's kind of almost habitual as well, I feel, like drinking soft drinks and juices and things like that can be very habit forming.
Yeah.
My daughter has recognised that when she goes out with friends and with other people, everyone orders soft drink, and they just can't get over the fact that she just doesn't order a drink with her meal. If she has anything, it would be like a fresh lime soda, which is just soda water with fresh lime in it.
Yeah.
Sometimes kombucha, coconut water would be something else that my kids would have. But outside of that, no, whole fruit is great. Juice is just too much concentrated sugar, even if it is freshly squeezed. Yeah. One other last minute swap specifically for kids is, swapping out like flavoured chips and flavoured popcorns and things like that with just plain salted.
Yeah.
With chips, I mentioned in a previous podcast, you can now buy chips that are cooked in either olive oil or avocado oil from pretty much every supermarket. So we do have options that aren't vegetable oil based, which is great. Like, things are changing,
great,
it really is great. When I think of when I first started as a naturopath, what was available to me, and everything that was available just cost the absolute earth.
Yes.
And now there's just so much choice when it comes to finding healthier alternatives. So, hopefully I've given you some ideas today. And, even if it's just one of these swaps, it's going to benefit you in the long run, because these little 1%ers, they all just add up.
I love that. Just quickly, I love, when they talk about a plane.
Yes.
And two planes take off and one changes just 1 degree.
Yes.
And it ends up in a totally different
destination.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah,
Great analogy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Same as this with food.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always learn.
Yes.